Welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Fundamentals Masterclass. We've gone over so far mindset, deal flow, and estimating repairs. And today we're going to be talking about evaluating deals. You know, Kenny Rogers really sums up this game pretty well. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. Ideally, you want to buy every good deal you can. And it's, in my opinion, it is better to walk away from a good deal than that you're unsure about than buy a bad one. But today we're going to learn how to actually evaluate deals and know whether a deal is good or not. But first, just a couple definitions. You may already be familiar with these. The first one is ARV. This stands for after repair value, and it's the price the home will be worth, the market value of the home after the proper repairs have been made. So once you've done a certain amount of repairs to get it to look like other homes that have sold in the area, it should be worth similar to what those other homes sold for. And the ARV is determined by using a CMA, which brings me to CMA. It stands for Comparative Market Analysis, otherwise known as comps. And a CMA is a report of sale or lease transactions in an area. And what you're looking for in a CMA report is you're pulling this report for similar properties in that area that have recently sold, or in the case of leases, recently leased. And that's going to help you determine your ARV. And by recently, the last 6 months. For sale transactions, the last 6 months. Obviously, the closer or the most recent, that's better, more accurate data to what the current market is, but at least within the last 6 months. With lease transactions, you can go back to the last 12 months, but for sale transactions, you really want to be within the last 6 months. And then MAO, maximum allowable offer. This is the maximum offer that you can make on a property based on your particular set of criteria, based on your buy box. And depending on your exit strategy, and actually, if you have multiple exit strategies, you could have multiple MAOs. So if your primary strategy is to go flip the house, that's one MAO that you would have. And if you could also rent the house out, that would be a different MAO. So you could have two different MAOs for the same property. And really, this is the maximum price. Ideally, you want to get the home at or below that particular price for your exit strategy. Now, you really want to avoid being this guy, the guy that knows what the comps say, but thinks your house is special. Hate to break it to you, it's probably not. You're going to deal with a lot of sellers. Like if you really get into this industry and you start marketing for deals and talking with a lot of home sellers, you're going to find a lot of home sellers that they're kind of like this guy where they don't care what the comps say. Their house is special. They've got the Taj Mahal, and for whatever reason, they believe their home is worth a lot more than what the comps say. But you're not going to be that way because ultimately the data is not going to lie. The homes are worth and they will sell for about what the comps, what other homes that are similar to your property have sold for. So you're going to stick to the comps, stick to the data, and let that dictate your decisions, especially in the case of what we're talking about today, your decision to, when you're evaluating a deal, whether to go forward and get it under contract and actually close on the property. Here's an example of a CMA report. This specific one is a summary report of homes sold. And it breaks down, really, you can have this report break down a lot of things. This particular one talks, breaks down, you got the address, the subdivision, list price, sale price, days on market, price per square foot, a couple other things. But you can have it break down other features or other details that may be relevant to you and your business and really what you're looking for. And then you can and should look at each individual property too, because you want to get a closer look to see what that property, what its condition was, what finishes it had, what extra amenities that it has, going through the pictures and comparing that, because that's going to help you determine what your repair budget is. That's what we talked about last time. We talked about the repair budget. And I mentioned multiple times that you want to repair homes. Your repair budget is going to help you get the home to meet the comps, not exceed the comps, just meet them. So when you're looking at the comps and you're looking at the homes, you're really finding the 3 to 5 homes that look the most like what your home is, as far as number of bedrooms and square footage and location, how close it is, and things like that. The 3 to 5 homes that have sold that most closely match what your home is, and you're going to repair the homes to look like those. And if you do that, then the home's value, its market value, will be similar to those. So it should sell at a price similar to those homes. Now, keep in mind that square footage, or at least price per square foot, and square footage, there's an inverse relationship. So like say your home is 2,000 square feet, and you see a home that's sold, and that home is 1,300 square feet, and the 1,300 square foot, the home, that comp sold for $150 a square foot. That doesn't really mean that your 2,000 square foot home is going to sell for $150 a square foot. There's an inverse relationship. The larger the home, generally the price per square foot is going to go down. Net effect, it's still going to be selling for typically a much higher price, but price per square foot will be lower. So I see newer investors make that mistake often. Wanted to point that out. All right. I want to be very clear. The only way to accurately determine ARV is by analyzing comps. You cannot determine market value from Zillow. I know, a lot of folks out there look at Zillow. Zillow is, especially if you're a realtor, this. Like, Zillow is not accurate at all. Like, their whole house flipping business went in the toilet, like using their own data. Like, no. Just don't use Zillow. Tax records. So tax records will give a value, and then they will give a tax value, and sometimes they also include a market value. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the home is, its current market value of what it could sell at. So don't use tax records to determine your market value. Old appraisals. So if the appraisal was within the past 12 months, it's relevant. The market could have changed. So it's not that you can't use that in consideration, but anything more than 12 months, like, it's just, it's not current. So you can't use that to determine value. Dissimilar homes. So you want to look at homes that look similar to yours. If it's much bigger, if it has extra bedrooms, if it's in a different location, different school zone, all those things, that impacts value. Those all impact value, and they really can make the value for those homes much different than what your home is worth. Pending sales on the market. So pending home sales are not comps. It is something you want to look at. And really all of these, I'm not saying don't look at Zillow to see what their opinion is. I'm just saying, like, take it with a grain of sand. It's probably not the market value. I'm not saying don't look at tax records and old appraisals. You can look at that. It's still data. I'm just saying don't use those to determine your value. You can use it as information, as just extra resources, but it shouldn't be determining the value. So pending homes is good information, really good information to have, because it shows you that a home that is in your area that looks like this, has these types of features, is in this condition, and was listed at this price, did get a contract in this many days on market. So all of that. What you don't know is, you don't know what the actual contract price is. You don't know that. And you will not know that until it's sold. And you also don't know what extra things like seller contribution may be involved. You don't know if it's still under option period. You don't even know if that contract is going to stick. So you don't know that. But you do know that, hey, homes in this condition, or this home was in this condition, and it was listed at this price and had this many days on market, and it did get a contract. That's relevant information. You just can't really determine value from that. And then active listings on the market. So active listings, they're available for sale, but they're not under contract. If your home was being listed today, they are your competition. So that is relevant information, but you can't determine comps from that because they're not under contract yet and they haven't sold. And until they actually become a sale, it's not a comp. It's good information to have, to know what your competition is, to know what conditions of those properties are in, what the listing prices for those properties, but they're not comps. You really need to accurately determine your ARV. There's really only a couple ways. MLS, this is the gold standard, and realtors are using this all day, every day. MLS, this is where, especially scaling a house flipping business, was living and breathing in MLS. This is the direct data on actual transactions in your market that you can look and really get those reports, kind of like the report I showed you before, and see all the data on these properties that sold, including, very importantly, the actual conditions, but also the sales price and how long it takes to sale. You could pay for an appraisal with buying off-market properties and stuff like that. Typically didn't do that unless the lender required it, which is early on. Like if you're dealing with private money lenders, we'll talk about financing later. But generally you're probably not getting an appraisal. You're buying distressed properties. You could. It's going to change things up a little bit, but usually you're not. You're working with an MLS. And also going back to MLS, like if you're not an agent, a licensed agent, and you want to be in this game long term, like I recommend, highly recommend, get your real estate license, or have your spouse or business partner get their real estate license. Someone in your core business or team should have a real estate license if you want to be in this business full time, long term. Like that is it'll be extremely valuable to you. If you're not licensed and you have no plan on getting licensed, you work closely with an agent. And if you develop a stronger relationship, some agents may, many won't, but some may be willing to set you up like with an admin type login. There are rules on that. So just know that. But otherwise, you're probably going to need to use some third-party data sources like PropStream and Propelio. I have a real estate license, so I go directly to the MLS. But PropStream and Propelio, there are a lot of investors that use those services to help them determine ARV. All right. Now, when you're pulling comps and looking at the reports and looking at homes that have sold, you're looking for homes that are similar to yours. Talked about that before. You're looking for 3 to 5 homes that are in your area, in your neighborhood that you're targeting, where your property is. And you're looking for 3 to 5 homes that are similar. This includes a square foot. A 2,000 square foot home, and you see a comp that's 1,300 square foot. That's not that similar. It's a different buyer that's buying a 1,300 square foot home that's buying a 2,000 square foot home. Now, it doesn't mean you can't look at it and make some adjustments. Just know that it's not that similar. You're looking for homes that maybe sold for 1,700, 1,800, 2,200 square feet. Those are a little bit more similar. So the closer you can get to what your home looks like, the better and more accurate it's going to be as a comp. The sales price, of course, price per square foot, build. So how, what was the year build? If it's kind of a mixed neighborhood where it has some newer homes, maybe built in the 90s or early 2000s, and also has a lot of older homes built in the 70s or 80s, well, that is going to impact price. You need to know that. And of course, pull comps and get comps that are closer to what your house, the year build where your house was. Features, bedrooms, bathrooms, lot size, finishes, appliances, like 4-bedroom homes, much different than a 3-bedroom home. That is going to impact things. Now, if your home is a 4-bedroom and most of the comps are 3 bedrooms, then you might be able to sell it for a little bit more. I said might. Really depends on the neighborhood. But if most of the comps are 4 bedrooms and you have the one of the few 3-bedrooms available, probably going to negatively affect the value, meaning it's going to sell less than those. Special amenities, does it have a pool, deck, a view? Like, does it have a view like of a lake? No, maybe your home doesn't, but some of the comps do. Like, can you use those as comps? I mean, that will have a huge value effect on value, a view of a lake. So you have to keep that in consideration. And the school districts, this can sneak up on you because some there are some neighborhoods, even prominent neighborhoods, where school districts can cut right through the middle of the neighborhood. And if you're not really watching out for this, you can have certain circumstances where maybe one school district is less desirable than another school district. And if you're not paying attention, you're looking at comps kind of that's scattered in between both. And if your home is in the one that's less desirable, it can put you in a bad spot if you were using comps that were in the better school district to judge your value, because obviously if it's a better school district, those homes probably are going to be selling at a better price. A few other considerations: busy street. There was a year where I bought, it was like very close to each other. There's this one year I remember, and I bought a couple properties that were on a busy street, and it was like very close to each other. Like, not the homes weren't close to each other. I just bought them somewhat around the same time period. And they were both like big headaches, because they didn't sell. They took a lot longer to sell and for much lower than what I anticipated. And it was because it was on a busy street. They're on after, like, any home that I got that was on a busy street, I heavily discounted it to correct for that. So, I mean, if it's on a busy street, just know that that is going to impact value. You can't necessarily use comps one for one if it's inside the neighborhood and your house is on a busy street. Just know that impacts value. Surrounding properties. So does your home back up, or is it facing a commercial property? Like, that affects value too. Is it right across the street from the school? That affects value. Is the backyard, if you go in the backyard, are there huge highline wires? That affects value. You got to think of this from like your perspective. If you were walking in as a buyer looking at this home and it looks beautiful, and then you go to the backyard and it has these huge highline wires that goes in the utility easement behind your home, like, how would you feel? Like, would that make you more or less excited to buy that home versus a home that does not have highline wires, or does not back up to some commercial property? Obviously, it's going to be factored in for buyers. And then, what's the flood history? What's the fire history, or any other structural change history? Now, flood in particular, because even fire, it affects insurance premiums, but flood, has kind of an extra effect because there's limits, and multiple flood event properties will eventually get capped out to where it's next to impossible for them to get FEMA flood insurance, and it'll just be an astronomically higher rate. So just be careful with those. Just knowing, like, if it has that kind of history, that is going to impact value. And then tenant occupied homes. Obviously, if you're buying a tenant occupied home and you're planning on selling as a tenant occupied home, that isn't going to sell for the same price typically that a vacant home where an owner can move into it, because owner occupied homes are going to sell typically for more than tenant occupied homes. Now, I say this more because if you're looking at comps and you're kind of like seeing that one oddball on there that just took way longer to sell, or it was quite a bit lower than other homes, there may be a reason. And more times than not, I'll go in and I'll take a deeper dive, and it's because it was tenant occupied home. So I know that, hey, just because that particular property sold, it took like 3 or 4 months longer than the average home to sell in that market. In the comps, it was because it was tenant occupied home. And if it wasn't, it probably would have sold for sooner. So just something to keep in mind. All right. Now, once you've determined your ARV, you'll be asking yourself, is it a deal? Like, you've already estimated your repairs, you've worked your comps, and you've come up with a value of, where your repairs need to be. You've determined your ARV. Is it a deal? And before you start asking that, you need to know, what is a deal? What is a deal to you? Because it really depends. A deal is different for everyone. You need to know what a deal looks like for you. And this is what we talked about in the deal flow session. Like, when you're targeting deals that you're looking for, something that's specific to you and your buy box that's going to fit with your exit strategies. If you're flipping houses, like medium price point homes, and you get a luxury deal come through your door, like, is that really a deal for you? Probably not. So it really depends. You need to know what a deal looks like for you. Now, as far as the math is concerned, The old faithful formula, 70% of ARV, which is your after repair value, minus repairs equals your MAO, or maximum allowable offer. This is the tried and true formula, and especially if you're house flipping, this formula works like almost all the time. Like there's so much margin built into that formula that it's just hard to go wrong. So it's not that you have to use this formula, but this is the old faithful. This is the tried and true formula that most investors can very simply, very easily determine, hey, is this a deal or not? Or is this worth pursuing? So here's how this formula, like if you were to use it, here's how it would work out. Say you find a deal that has an ARV, or after repair value, of $100,000. I know, like you're probably not out there looking for $100,000 houses, like fully remodeled where it's worth $100,000. I get that. Like pretty much all markets are going to be more than that these days. Some markets you could barely put a tent up in a like a 10 by 10 square for $100,000. But just to make math easy, like let's just assume you had an ARV home, or a home with an ARV of $100,000, and then it was going to cost $20,000 to repair that home because it's small, old, and it just needs paint and carpet. We're just going to use these, keep math simple here. So 70% of ARV in this case would be $70,000. Your estimated repairs is $20,000. So that means your offer is $70,000 minus $20,000 equals $50,000. That's your MAO. That's the maximum offer that you should be making. Ideally, you should be starting off a little bit lower, but $50,000 is the maximum you should be offering, at least if you want to make sure you're hitting the margins that you're targeting. Maybe you're wondering, is there any way I can offer more than that? Can I offer 75% or 80% of ARV? It definitely would help me be more competitive, right? Well, again, not to kind of sound like a broken record here. It depends. It really depends on what a deal is to you and what your exit strategy is. If you're looking to flip a house, the higher you get over 70% minus repairs, the higher you get means you're taking on more risk for less return. Does that make sense for you? You may recall in the previous session where I was talking about a situation where I was taking on more risk for less return. And some of those situations didn't quite turn out too well. So just know that you may be taking on more risk for less return. If everything goes perfectly, maybe it works out, but if repairs end up being more than expected, some surprises happen. If you end up selling it for less than you anticipated, or it takes much longer, or any combination of those, it may not make, it may not be a good deal anymore. It may be a dud. And if you've already bought it, like you're stuck with it. You gotta see it through. So now we're paying more. That could make sense, though, depending on your exit strategy. If you have other exit strategies, so house flipping, the 70% minus repairs, like it typically works in that situation. But if you're going to rent the home out long term, or if you're a short term rental, maybe as well, owner's finance, things like that, that will, there could be situations where yes, you could pay more. And how you finance the deal matters too, because that really goes into your cost of acquiring the home. Are you using cash? Are you getting 100% seller's financing? Are you buying it subject to existing financing? That's going to drastically reduce your holding cost expenses. Versus if you were to use like hard money. So that may be a reason why you could offer a little bit more, but just know it really depends on your exit strategy, and you really need to have this dialed in. But say you were to offer 75% minus repairs, basically it looks like this. You got 75% of ARV, so $75,000 now. Repairs are $20,000 still. And 75 minus 20, you got $55,000. So you could, in this situation, offer $5,000 more than someone that's offering 70% minus repairs. This is where, say, someone was offering 75% because they're going to be, their exit strategy is a rental, and you're going as a flip. This is how, someone is able to be more competitive because they have a different exit strategy. And this is also why, if you have multiple exit strategies, one, it protects you in the case of a flip. But also it gives you the ability to acquire certain deals that you may lose out on because you have a different exit strategy. So just kind of keep that in mind. But regardless, you really want to kind of remove the guesswork, and you can do that by using a deal analyzer. It makes it so much easier. I mean, you have the quick formula in your head that can let you at least know, hey, is this worth pursuing? But using a deal analyzer is going to remove a lot of the guesswork. This is kind of a snapshot of an Excel spreadsheet that I used early on, and I pretty much built my business off this, especially the early years. This one is a spreadsheet for flipping. This is a snapshot of one that I use for rental to kind of judge my return on a rental property. You can search for free templates like this online. There's plenty of them out there. You can build them out yourself. There's free online app calculators too. And this one right here, this is a very comprehensive deal analysis app by a company called ROI Muse. If you're a member of our community, our pro community, you can get a huge discount on this app. It's really good. I like it. I find myself using it quite frequently. It's very comprehensive, but just regardless, use a deal analyzer, whether you build one yourself like I did, you get a free one online, customize it, you use an app like ROI Muse or some other app, use a deal analyzer. It really takes the guesswork and helps you really fine tune your deal analysis. So what exit strategy is best? I'll keep it simple for you. There's only 2 exit strategies. If someone has ever come up with a third, let me know. I'm only aware of 2. You can either sell it or you can rent it. That's it. There are a few different ways you can actually do each one of those. But it really boils down. Like, you're going to sell it or you're going to rent it out. Now, selling it, you could wholesale it. This is, or I'll go more into that later. But yeah, you could wholesale it. You could wholetail it. You could flip it. And you could owner's finance it, which really owner's finance is just a financing mechanism on selling the property. And then on renting, you could long-term or short-term rental. I know there's, midterm is kind of a new phrase now, but you can rent it out regardless of what duration that you want to do. Some considerations on what exit strategy to use is, when considering like selling or renting, like if you're open to rental properties, which I encourage you to definitely consider that, especially if you're going to be doing this at volume, like you're going to be a lot more proud of, at least your financial statement will be, with the properties that you still own that you kept 10 years from now than the ones you flipped. But in any case, there are certain areas where you just don't want to rent. Like maybe it's too far, maybe it's in a neighborhood, like you just don't want to rent there. And then some certain home features, like I don't like renting homes with pools. Also luxury homes, they typically don't perform that well as a rental. Now, if it's a short-term rental, that could be a little different because it has extra amenities where you can really get high short-term rental rates that may make a particular home better as a short-term or better as a rental. And then sales. Some neighborhoods, like they're great markets to flip houses in because they go quick, high demand. You can get really good margins. Now on the wholesale side, so wholesale, if you don't know what it is, it's you're getting it under contract and you assign that contract to another investor who's actually going to buy it, and then you get a fee for that. This was never really a big part of my business, but I did use it as risk management. And what I mean by that is I would get a deal under contract, and if it was a deal that I did not want to own, there was no reason whatsoever I wanted to actually close on the property and take ownership to it. And that was usually because it was either far out and I didn't have the resources to flip it in that area, or it was just in such bad shape and much older home and an area. It was going to be more of a headache for me. So and then the other situation would be I've just got a lot of projects going on at the time, and I didn't want to take on the new one, so we'd wholesale it. But yeah, for those reasons, you can just assign the contract to someone else. But for us, it was usually there wasn't really any reason for us to take title to it, so we'd just end up wholesaling it. Now, wholesale really refers to you are closing on it, and you're just going to clean it up, put it right back in the market. This can work really well, especially in your lower end price points where it makes homes more affordable. So these are move-in ready. They have all the features and they don't have any structural issues. I would do this typically in the similar situation where Either also with wholesale, I could make a large percentage of if I flipped it. Like I would make most of the money that I would make wholetailing it as if I would have flipped it. So that makes sense. Also, just kind of inventory control, and then the risk. If I can make a large percentage of my flip profit and just by wholetailing it, and then I'm not taking all that extra risk. So it's extra risk management too. And then owner's finance. This, it's not really part of my business strategy, but you can owner's finance properties. Sometimes you can get, especially in certain areas and certain price points, to where the in mortgage would end up being just slightly above where rent rates are. Then you could potentially sell a home for above market price, and it ends up being a pretty good exit strategy. And also for inventory control, if the market's really slow, this is an extra thing that most sellers are not going to offer. But if you do, then it opens up a different buyer pool to you. Now, key indicators of a good deal. Number one for me has always been it works with 100% financing. I don't want to put money down. If it works with 100% financing, like 2 thumbs up for me. Really good. Nearly every deal that I bought has been with 100% financing. And typically it's been with private financing. Also, profit over repairs, meaning we're making more money or at least as much money on profit as we are spending in our repair budget. A $50,000 remodel has risk. That's a pretty large remodel. And if you're taking on that extra risk, you need to be rewarded for it. So in that case, I would want $50,000 or more in profits. The lowest purchase price over the last 12 months. Now, what this refers to, the price you're buying it at should be lower than the last 12 months of all comps in the neighborhood. This is not really hard to get, especially if you're buying distressed properties off market. If you're buying a rental property on market, you definitely want it on that lower end, and it should be kind of the lowest price. But this part should not be difficult to achieve. Cash flow. $200 a month, $200 a month or more from cash flow from rentals or owner's finance. And this includes after vacancy, repairs, and capital expenditures. You have to escrow for those things, $200 a month or more. There are certain situations where maybe I'm okay with a little bit less. But again, after all of the expenses have been accounted for and escrowing for vacancy, repairs, and capital expenditures, that keeps the deal strong. And you can, of course, cash flow that and write out appreciation for your benefit over the next several years. And then multiple exit strategies, especially when flipping houses, multiple exit strategies. Talked about before how I changed plans, or I got back to my roots of having multiple exit strategies with flips. And it really helped with risk mitigation, risk management, knowing that if I don't get the target price that I need for a flip, or if something goes wrong, that I could rent it out. And it would at least break even, but probably positive cash flow. And that was a good alternate exit strategy that would protect me from potentially losing money. If you only have one exit strategy and that doesn't go right, or things go off the rails for whatever reason, then if you don't have a viable alternate exit strategy, then put you in a bad situation where you could lose money, and you don't want to do that. Now, are there any deal killers like fire damage, extensive fire damage, lead-based paint, water damage, like maybe a flood house, major foundation or other structural framing, roofing issues, termite damage, aluminum wiring, heavy permits? Again, at risk of being a broken record, it depends. How comfortable are you with taking on a project like that? How experienced are you at taking on a project like that? And then what is your contractor's experience taking on a project like that? Does it even fit your buy box? Or is it gonna be a distraction? Like, those are all questions you really need to ask yourself. I've bought homes that have been in many of these situations. And most of them worked out really well because I knew what I was doing. Contractors knew what they were doing, had everything dialed in, and it was fine. But there have been others where I didn't, and maybe I wholesaled it or I just passed on it. But at the end of the day, like, you need to ask those questions, but also go, do the numbers work? Do the numbers work? If they don't work, walk away. It doesn't, I mean, if it fits your buy box, it doesn't mean you can't make an offer. Just make an offer for a number that works for you. And if you can't get it at that price, walk away. There's always another deal. But if the numbers do work and it matches your buy box, it matches your criteria, get it under contract. Get it under contract. Do not delay on that. Get it under contract. You can I always use standard contracts. Like in Texas, we have the Texas Real Estate Commission, or TREC. I would use the TREC standard contract. I was using that even before I was a licensed agent. And really it came down to title companies knew what it was. They were very familiar with it. Realtors were familiar with it. Sellers typically had seen it before. They were somewhat familiar with it because they probably used something very similar when they bought the house. So that's why I used it. And also, it's vetted. It was vetted by attorneys, by the state, and it kind of covers all bases. So that's why I used it. You can use one pagers. A lot of agents do have a one page, maybe a two pager. I don't recommend just pulling one off the internet. Like if you do that, have an attorney review it. I mean, there's a reason why state commissions, they have contracts that are 13, 15, 20 pages. And those reasons are lawsuits. When lawsuits happen, they end up making it longer, right? So doesn't mean you can't use a one pager. Just have an attorney review it to make sure that it's legit and it really accurately outlines the intent of the contract and follows all state laws, which is very important. A couple really key points. Option period. Like this is your due diligence period. If you have an option period and if you're getting an option period when you enter in the contract, this really gives you a period to where, hey, look, you can go do some extra due diligence, have contractors go by, do some inspections or whatever. And if everything works out, you move forward. If not, then during that period, you may be able to terminate without losing, having your earnest money at risk. And earnest money is kind of the second big thing, where this is how much money you're putting down when you're actually signing the contract. Most of the deals that I did had zero earnest money. And in Texas, we're allowed to do that. Earnest money is a negotiable item. And I would have zero because my ability and my promise to do what I said was enough. And most sellers didn't care. Some did. And in which case I would start small and work my way up, $100, $1,000. Now, there were other situations where it was competitive and I knew it was competitive and I was willing to go put $5,000 as earnest money down. Just know that that money is at risk, and it's at risk based on whatever the parameters you have in your contract. Again, this is not legal advice. If you're not using a TREC contract, you need to have an attorney really explain to you what the terms of whatever contract you are using, what they mean, and how they apply to you and what you're trying to do. Closing time frame. So the closing time frame is, you're going to be closing on or before whatever said date. And you'd be surprised. I know a lot of people say, hey, I can close on a house in 7 days or whatever. Like most sellers don't need to close that quickly. Maybe they do. And if they do, it's probably more financial related. Maybe they have a foreclosure coming up, but most, they're not quite that pressed. And there are certain circumstances where they need to close later, maybe 30 days, 45 days, 60 days out. Close on their timeline. Like as long as it meets your timeline, typically regarding your financing, like you can't say I'll close in 5 days when you have a hard money loan, because it's probably going to take the hard money lender more than 5 days to get everything together on their end. So you want to make sure it meets your timeline, but also meets their timeline. And then last, get the disclosures. Get a seller's disclosure in every single property you buy. Every single property you buy, get a seller's disclosure. Sellers have to provide you one. They need to provide you one. You need to ask for it. You need to have that handy, know what the document looks like, have them fill it out completely to the best of their knowledge, even if they've never lived in the home. I don't really care if they fill it out and just say, I don't know about anything because I've never lived there and I inherited this property. That's fine. I want that on file. I want that disclosure because I'm going to have to fill one out when I go sell the property. I'm going to have to give one to the buyer that I sell it to. So I need that information to be able to help me accurately fill it out for my end buyer. So you want to get these disclosures. If they've had any inspection reports, or structural inspection reports, roof reports, or anything like that, get that from the seller. And then any extra reports that you have and all that, you're going to need to provide that to your end buyer. And if you're an agent, you know all this stuff. If you're not an agent, work closely with your agent. They can help you know what kind of disclosures you need to be getting, also disclosures you need to be making when you go to sell the house. Now, how would you like to know how to ethically tie up a property without ever signing a contract or putting any money down? So there have been times where, usually it was with wholesalers, where they text me or call me, hey, I got this deal. We think it's like 30,000 repairs, and it's in this, it's in this neighborhood, and we think it's worth, like 250,000 ARV, and we're selling it for 150. I'd be like, wow, okay, sounds good. I'm kind of tied up today. I can't get it tomorrow. And they're like, well, we really want to make sure that we get some other people looking at it. Let me know as soon as you can. What ends up happening a lot of times is I get out there and they're like, yeah, we've already accepted someone, or we already got a contract. And that feeling sucks, especially if it's sold at a price that I could pay for. What I ended up doing and kind of switching is the conversation of, hey, look, so you're saying it's worth this, okay? And you're saying that this is the repairs, like you think this is a realistic number of what it's going to take to rehab the property to make sure that it reaches that value, right? Okay. And you're selling it for this, and then making a verbal offer right then and there. It's like, look, based on this information, yeah, I can offer you this. Does that make sense? How does that work for you? Okay, great. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go see it tomorrow. Go ahead and prepare the contract, send it over. I'm gonna go see it tomorrow, and we'll get everything signed. As long as everything works out, then we'll move forward. So what that ends up doing, and this isn't 100% foolproof, but it does emotionally tie them in. Now they're engaged with you, and you can take these extra steps. I'm just saying, okay, so you understand, like we're gonna move forward. Like, you've already told me all this. I'm just gonna go verify it, but you've already said everything. And as long as this all plays out, like, we're gonna move forward, right? And so you're getting that verbal commitment from them. So it makes it a little bit less likely that they're going to go behind your back and sell it to some other investor. Now, this works really well for wholesalers. You could also use it for a home sale that may be talking with different investors. Just know it's not 100% foolproof. Really, if you want to go a bit more foolproof way, is you just get it under contract. You get it under contract, and you have an option period. Because as long as you have an option period, that's that due diligence period where you can have, like, go in and physically walk the property. You can also go in and have your contractors go in and do your due diligence to help you really accurately nail down your repair estimate number. You can go look at comps and all the other stuff. So either way, whether you're doing the verbal way or you're just getting under contract blindly and getting an option period, those are great ways to tie up a property, make sure you don't lose it. Now, to sum everything up, I'm sure if Kenny Rogers was a real estate investor, he'd say you got no one to flip them and no one to skip them. There's actually a YouTube video somewhere you can search Brant. He sings his own rendition of that song. So if you want to be entertained, go check that out. Probably better served looking for more deals and analyzing deals. So this really wraps up evaluating deals in this part of the masterclass. Next up is financing. I'm going to show you how, like, financing is really the one thing that is the easiest part of this whole masterclass. It's the easiest part of investing in real estate. Once you know how to do it, there's really no reason why you can't finance every single deal. I'm going to show you how, including how to find and work with private money lenders. So you don't want to miss it. Look forward to it. I'll see you then.